Hello everyone, I am Rohit Ranjan, a recent engineering graduate from India. In this video, I am excited to guide you through a step-by-step process of building a full-stack application called Authentication, an event management platform. Now you might be wondering what makes this tutorial different from others that you find on YouTube. Well, instead of focusing solely on writing a line-by-line code, my goal is to provide you with a comprehensive understanding of the entire application building process. We will look into crucial aspects such as application structure, authentication flow, database design, and integrating third-party APIs. Rather than simply sharing chunks of code for you to copy and paste, I will take a different approach. Each feature we implement will be divided into separate chapters, carefully explained and abstracted from one another. By doing so, my aim is to equip you with the knowledge and skills to not only replicate these features in your own projects, but also understand the underlying process behind their implementation. Additionally, I will provide a thorough walkthrough of the code so that you can gain a solid understanding of how the project works. I hope you find this video tutorial insightful and enjoyable. So let's get started. Currently the project is hosted at eventally.vercel.app. You can just visit this platform and play around this application. Talking about the tech stack, we will be using Next.js as a front-end framework, Tailwind CSS for our design. Although this project is not UI heavy, but we need to have some basic UI designs and we will be implementing them through Tailwind. For all our backend related stuff such as authentication, databases and storage, we will be using Appwrite. Appwrite is an amazing piece of software in which you can develop web, mobile and Flutter application all with the same backend, right? And for delivering emails, we will be using SendGrid's API, and at last we will be using Vercel for our deployment. So let's have a quick demo of what we will be building in this video. So let's just have a quick walkthrough of how a project works and what are the different features which we have implemented in this project. Head over to eventally.vercel.app and you will get this homepage. Just click on Get Started and you will get this login page. Click on any of the login providers. I would be selecting Google. And once you are authenticated successfully, you will be redirected to a success URL. And after that, you will be redirected to my landing page. Now we have different kinds of options. If you click on My Events, you will see a blank page because I have no active events created as of now. Or you can click on Find Events, where you can see all the active events created by different users. We currently have one active event. Or you can click on Create Event to create your own event. So let's see how we can create our own event. You need to first give a name of the event. Let's say the name of my event is AppwriteConf. And I give a sample description. I also need to upload a banner photo. So I would be just uploading my Appwrite logo. And I need to give some more information about the event. So let's say what are the target audience. So I would say everyone. And either the event can be an in-person event or virtual event. So in this case, it is an in-person event. My expected number of audience are 200 and the ticket price is null. So I would just leave it as 0. Now, is it tech focused? I would say yes. And what is the agenda of this event? It's meet and greet, let's say. You can just include a number of sponsors for your event. So let's say the first sponsor of my event is Appwrite itself. And you can just copy the Appwrite's URL from here. And I can also add sponsor as many as I can and also remove the sponsor dynamically. So let's say my second sponsor is GitHub. And I can just copy GitHub's URL. Next, I need to provide the details of the host, that is the one who is creating this event or hosting this event. So I would just autofill all the default values and I just need to select an event date. So let's say it's on 20 November 2023. And at last, you need to provide the social links for your event. So I would be just providing social links of Appwrite. And at last, you need to select an option whether this event would require approval from the host to attend this event. So in my case, I would be selecting yes and just click on save. Once you do that, you will see your event is listed at this all active events page. See, this is the event which we just created. And if you just click on my events page, you can see the event which you just created is now getting listed here. If you click on find events, you might notice that the event which I created has other options such as view registrations and delete event. but there's no such options for, the event which is created by someone else. So if you click on register, You'd find different details about the event which you entered while creating this event, such as the banner URL, the name of the event hosted by, the date of the event, address, and bunch of other details which you just entered in the form. And you also have the list of sponsors and all the social links activated. If you click on contact, you will get the host email ID to contact. And you can just click on register for registering the event. Now, you can see that this is a dynamic URL or a dynamic link, which is / and then a certain unique user ID for this event. We'll see how we can implement dynamic links in Next.js. So if you go back, click on view registrations, you will see this empty page. Now let's just create a registration with a different user. So I have a different user account and I would just visit Event Alley here, authenticate myself and click on find events. So as soon as I click on register, as you can see, this is the event which we just created. Click on register and this is a register button. Click here and I will get this message, thank you for registration. And as you can see, we also had dynamically, or you can say using Appwrite's real-time API, we have listed this user's email ID, the attendee's email ID and name, right? So as soon as how many attendees register for this event, you will all get the registrations in real time. So let's just click back on home and open my Gmail. Okay, so let me just log in. So once you open your Gmail, now I have as an event manager or the host of the event, I have an option to either accept this registration or reject this registration. So once I click on accept, you will see this button change to accepted and an email is being sent to the, as you can see, this button changed to accepted. That means an email has been sent to the registry or the attendee. And if you just reload this page, okay, let's just wait. As you can see, we have got an email from eventally.in and let's just open. So you can see the name of the attendee that you have been accepted to attend the name of the event, and you can contact the host. So what if we reject the registration? So if you click on just reject, now instead of accepted, this button would change into rejected and the attendee would get a similar email but stating that this registration has been his registration approval has been rejected. So this is the template that your invitation has been cancelled to attend Appwrite conferences, and like this is how you get the acceptance and rejection emails, right? Other than that, what you can do is export all the registrations into a CSV file for future references. So you can just click on save and let's just open this file. So you can see in my CSV format, I have name and email ID of the attendee. Like if you click on find events, other than that, you can just simply delete this event. And once you click on delete event, I also have my other accounts email ID logged in here. And let's just reload this page to get all the events. All that. So you can see I have my email ID. Now, if I just click on delete event, I would see this event just gets deleted in real time. This is possible because of using Appwrite's real-time API. So if I click on delete event, you can see that event has been deleted from all the pages, right? And if I go on my events, I don't find any events, right? So that means we can also delete that event and also create an event. This was a quick demo of what the application does and what we are going to build. Now, in the next step, we'll get started about how we are going to design a database and what is the user flow of this application. So as I have used Appwrite Cloud as a backend for my project, let's just explore Appwrite Cloud and what are the certain features that Appwrite Cloud provides and how we can implement them in our project, right? And we'll also explore what is the database structure Appwrites follow and how we are going to use database provided, how we are going to structure our database according to our needs and our use case. So head over to cloud.appwrite.io, and if you're new to cloud.appwrite, you can just click on create project and just name your project and click on create button. But instead I have some project created. I will just create on this Event Alley project. And once you click on this particular project, you will just get a clean dashboard about providing some of the major metrics of your project. Let's say the bandwidth, the request, the real-time connections, etc. And you have all the features such as authentication, database, function, storage. And if you click on authentication, you can see all the users who have authenticated for this project, and click on settings. So you will find the list of all OAuth2 providers which you can set up in your project. Currently I have set up GitHub and Google. And you also have the option of storage. So as I show you, by creating an event, everyone needs to upload a banner for that event. So the banner which is being uploaded is being stored in this bucket. And if I click on database, currently I have 3 databases. First is events, registrations, and sponsors. So if I show you the events database, inside my events database, I have a collection known as active events. And inside my active events, each event that is being created is being stored as a document. So there is currently a single event which has been active on my platform. And corresponding to that, this document has been created with all the required attributes. Now, notice the name of the event. This is a test event, right? Now, if I go back to my registration database, you can find a collection over here as test event. And also in my sponsors database, you will find a collection named as test event. So you might have concluded that each event that is being created, we have an corresponding collection both in registrations and sponsors. Why are we doing it? I would explain it in a bit. So to better understand this database structure of databases, collections, and documents, consider seeing this diagram. So if you're a Windows user, you might have seen different drives into your system. So you have C drive, D drive, E drive, different kinds of drives, right? Consider these drives as database. Inside your database, or let's say inside your drive, you have different folders. So consider these folders similar to collections, right? Now inside this folder, you have different files. Consider these files as document. And if you open a file, or let's say open a document, you will find your actual data, right? So if I just put both of the database structures side by side, you can consider your drives as your database, your folders as your collections, your files as your documents. And when you open that particular file or that particular document, you will find that actual data, right? Makes sense? Now let's just understand how, or just list down all the basic features of our project and just get a brief understanding of how our project is getting structured and why do we need 3 databases and how is the database, different databases or different collections are getting linked to a single event, right? So let's just list down all the events which list down all the features that we need to implement into our project. So, okay, let me just zoom in. Okay, the first feature is obviously authentication. Once I have authenticated, I need to show option of listing all the events, and I also show you can list over the my events, creating an event, and let's say event description page, register for an event. What else we are left with? We have authentication, we have listing, we have event description, we can register for an event, we can send mail to attendees, and you can also export the list of attendees, right? And I guess these are all the core features which are present currently in our application. We can also delete the event. And I guess these are all the main features which are currently present into our application. Now let's understand what kind of flow are we going to follow. Before that, one thing you might have known that every database has a database ID, right? If I go into a particular database, every collection that is present over here have a collection ID. And inside collection, every event that is created or every document that is created has a document ID. That means any document that would be created in this collection would have a unique document ID, right? So just keep this in mind, and we'll see how we can use this document ID to establish relationship between different collections and our events, right? So let's just understand how our user flow is going to be. So we have a user, right? Now, once a user is created, it is assigned a unique user ID. Let me just zoom out a bit. Okay. So once a user is created, let's say I authenticate myself, I am being assigned a unique user ID, right? Now this user ID is unique across all the users present in that particular project. Similarly, what I said is I have my events database. Then inside my events database, I have my active events collection. Let's just mark it as database, and this is my collection. And inside my active events collection, I have my different events created as documents. Now each event that is created is also being assigned a unique ID. That means every event that you create on this platform has been assigned a unique ID, which is unique across all events created in this platform. How we can use this uniqueness, or let's say this unique ID, right? As I said, I have two different databases. One is my registration database. One is my sponsor database. But by default, these don't have any collections. How will the collection be created? Once an event is created, I get my event ID and use this event ID to create a collection in the name of that event, right? And similarly, with the same name as that event, a collection is being created in sponsors database and registration database. Now these both collections would have the same ID. Now this would have a same ID, this would have the same ID. Let's say this is ID1, and my event ID or my document ID is also ID1. So this is being created with this ID1, and this is being created with ID1. Now you would say, how come these two different collections have the same ID? They can have the same ID because they are present in the different databases. Now if they have present in the same database, they can't have same IDs. But now currently they are in different databases, they can have the same ID. And this ID is similar, let's say it's the same as the event ID or the document ID of that particular event. Now once my event is created in my registration, event collection is created, it would have two attributes. One is name and email. And once my sponsors collection is created, or my particular collection has been created regarding that event, it would have two attributes. One is the name of the sponsor and the URL of the sponsor. Now, as let's say there is a new user which has been provided a user ID, registers for this event. Now, once this user registers for this event, this user has been stored as a document in my event collection, and this document ID would be same as my user ID, so that it's easier to retrieve or prevent duplicate registrations for a particular event. And similarly, as soon one of my sponsors is created, or as you have saw that we can dynamically add sponsors, all that sponsors would be created as document in my event collection in my sponsors database. So what does that mean? Is as soon as an event is created, now let's just have some more space. As soon as my event is created, in my events, active events collection, a doc is created. And using this same documents ID, doc ID, in my registrations collection, a registration database, a collection is created, and in my sponsors database, a collection is created. Now, why have I done that? You can see that it is a kind of a relationship between the document and the collection that is being created. Why? Because once I go to this, once I have the document ID, let's say the document or the event ID, I can extract all the details of that event using this event ID from this document, because once I have the document ID, I can extract all the details of that document. And since I have access to the ID, this is also similar to the collections of this registration. I can extract all the registrations for that event and also all sponsors for that event. So using a single piece of ID, I can extract all the details for that event, all the registrations for that event, and all the sponsors for that event. This is the reason that because it's a NoSQL type of database, we can establish a relationship between different collections and database across projects, so that once you get a single database or single document ID, you can use it to access all the different data regarding that single event, right? So makes sense? Now in this chapter, before getting started building our application, let's set up our application or set up our development environment. As I said in starting, that we will be using Next.js to build the front end side of our application. So let's just understand what Next.js is and how is it different from React, and what are the features that we would be using of Next.js into our application. We would be also creating a sample Next.js project and connecting it with Appwrite Cloud, so that we can communicate between our project and our databases and authentication systems, right? So let's get started. If you move over to nextjs.org, you will find this landing page. Just click on Get Started. And if you just carefully read, it would state that Next.js is a React framework which provides you additional structures and features on top of React. So if you are new to Next.js, I would suggest you to have some of basic knowledge of React before getting started with Next.js. Although all the knowledge of your React would come handy while you are working with Next.js. So what are the main features that Next.js provides us? The first major feature is the routing system, that it has an inbuilt out-of-the-box support for routing system. It has client-side and server-side rendering for client and server components. It is easy to fetch data using the fetch functionality. It also has out-of-the-box support for styling such as Tailwind CSS, and also the API routes, so that you can build full stack applications. So how to install Next.js into your system? First, move over to nodejs.org and install the currently latest version available of Node.js. Once you install the latest version of Node.js, just go to your terminal, select the directory in which you want to create your project, and just paste this command, which is npx create next app @latest. This will automatically install the latest version of Next into your project. Just click on enter. And you need to give the name of your project. So in my case, it's Event Alley. And I would be using TypeScript in this project. And let's also use ESLint. And obviously, as I said earlier, for styling purposes, we will be using Tailwind CSS. Selecting this option will automatically configure Tailwind with your Next.js project. So now instead of source directory, we would be using app directory into your application. And we would be using app router. And let's just leave all the default commands. Now once you hit enter, you would see that Node installs all the required dependency into your project. And with that, let's just wait until the installation gets complete. So once the installation is complete successfully, you will get this message as success, created your project at your required directory. Now just navigate to your directory and open this project in your VS Code. Now as you can see, I have a basic folder structure. The first one is an app directory which contains all my source code, and this inside contains a page.jsx which has some kind of a boilerplate or an example code on how to work with Next.js. You also have some couple of more files such as nextconfig.js, which contains the configuration files for Next.js. And we also have some configuration files of Tailwind and also for TypeScript. Now, before getting started to building our application, let's understand the routing system which Next.js follows. So if you go to the official documentation on Next.js and click on the routing, and inside routing, you can select defining routes. Now, and the first line of creating routes, you will notice that it clearly states Next.js uses a file-based routing system to define routes, right? That means that every route that you create represents a folder into your app directory. Let's suppose you want to create a /dashboard app route or a route having the name /dashboard. So for that, inside your app directory, you need to create a folder as dashboard, and inside that folder, you need to have a file known as page.js. Now this is very important because without page.js, the directory or that route won't be rendered. Any file that you put except page.js inside dashboard wouldn't be rendered, and it can be used to store different elements or components of a web application or your UI. But the main page that would be rendered onto your screen of that route is page.js. And secondly, one of the concepts of route that we would be using into our application is dynamic routes. Now, where we'll be using dynamic routes? Let's say we have an event page and we need to display the list detail of an particular event, but that event would change or that event would be dynamic. So we would be using dynamic links or dynamic routes for that purpose. To create a dynamic route, just simply name your folder with a square brackets inside it. So if you want to create a dynamic route, just name the folder as inside a square bracket, and that would be treated as a dynamic route in Next.js. Now you have a basic understanding of Next.js. Now let's just connect our Appwrite cloud and our Next.js project. So head over to cloud.appwrite.io, and once you're authorized, just click on create project and create a new project. I would be just using this existing project, Event.ly. Now once you click on this project, at the most bottom part, you will have an option to add a platform. So click on add platform, and we would be selecting web application. Now you need to give a name of this web application. Let's say I'm giving the name Event.ly and the host name. Currently, as we would be developing it locally, I would be selecting localhost, but you can just change it further if you are deploying it on any other platform. Click on next. Now it says that we need to install some app node packages. So just copy this package, go to your Appwrite Next.js project, and just install Appwrite as an npm package dependency. Once you run this command, Appwrite would be installed into your project, and if you go to package.json, you can see Appwrite's latest version is currently installed. Now this is like how you can set up Appwrite as a project, but we would be doing these stuffs in the later part of this video. So just click on next, and this is how you can just create a new client so that you can make requests to the server of Appwrite. And once you're done with this, click on take me to my dashboard, and that's all you need to do to configure Appwrite and Next.js for building this application. The next part, we will start building our application and start implementing different features which is present into your project. Now let's just start building our application. So the first feature which we would implement is authentication. So just at appwrite.io, click on documentation, and inside the side panel under references, you would find an option known as account. If you click on account, make sure you have a client-side SDK selected for web, and in the demo I show you that we will be using Google, GitHub and Magic URL to set up our authentication system. Now Google and GitHub are an example of OAuth authentication using Appwrite. So just select this option which is create OAuth 2 session, and according to this documentation, you just need to create a client object, and using that client object we need to initiate your account object. The object which you created using this account, you just need to call this function which is create OAuth 2 session and give the name of an OAuth 2 provider. Now if you move to your console, inside authentication, if you go to settings, you can see that I have GitHub and Google enabled as my OAuth 2 provider. So before making sure that your OAuth 2 providers work properly, if you click on any of the OAuth 2 providers, you can see that you need to provide an app ID and app secret so that it works properly. So for Google, if you want to get this app ID and app secret, go to your cloud console and create a project. Now inside APIs and services, click on credentials, and here click create credentials and select OAuth client ID. Now, you need to select your web application, but just a small note, even through if you are building any type of applications, let's say Android, iOS, Mac OS, Windows, using Appwrite, you always need to select a web application, right? So you just need to give a name to your client ID. And now here you have an option of authorize redirect URIs. So if you go over to your Appwrite console, you can see that there is an redirect UI. And just copy this URI and paste it here. Click on create. Now once you click on create, your OAuth to client ID, you will get your client ID and client secret. Just copy both of these and paste it here in respective fields. And your Google OAuth to OAuth to setup has been completed. Now for GitHub, you have to say and provide app ID and app secret. So where you can get your app ID and app secret. Now inside your settings and application, you need to register a new auth application. So let's say I just register a new application and I need to provide you a homepage URL, and it also needs an authorization callback URL. So if you go to your Appwrite console, you would see that there is an URI or redirect URI. Just copy this URI and paste it here. Click on register application. Once you click on application, create application, you would get your client ID, and for getting a new client secret, you can just click on generate a new client secret. So now you have your client ID and you have your client secret. Just copy both of these and paste in these fields respectively. Once you're done, you're just your setup for OAuth authentication for GitHub and Google has been done. Click on update and just close this button. Now you need to make request from your Next.js application to Google Cloud or let's say GitHub OAuth to provider using Appwrite. So how you can do that? So as I said you, these are the steps that you need to follow to make an authentication with OAuth 2. So let's go to the project. Now inside my app directory, I have created a folder known as constants, and inside constants I have a file named as appwriteconfig.tsx. Firstly, you need to create a class as appwriteconfig. Inside appwriteconfig, I have some variables created, which are database ID, active collection ID, banner bucket ID, and registration database ID. Now these are some fields which I know are constant and won't change over time. So just create an env.local file and make sure you add all these URLs or all these project IDs into your local environment so that it's safe when you push it into any version management system such as GitHub. So once you're done, you need to create a constructor for this project. So as soon as someone initiates this class, this object has the project set up as yours. Now for Google login, what you need to do is just call this account.createOAuth2 session, pass the name as Google for your Google OAuth 2 provider, and you just need to pass the login and success URLs for a better user experience, right? And once this authentication is complete, you just need to call this get user current user. Now what this get current user does, it stores the data of that logged in user into a local storage so that it can be used to check if the user is logged in or not, right? Now how to call this method and how to construct this constructor. Now if you see my login directory, you can see that I have some failure URL and my success URL set up. Now if you go to my login.tsx, you will see that I have just created an object of my appwriteconfig class, and as soon as someone clicks on my button, I just call this function appwriteconfig.google, and as soon as someone clicks on my GitHub button, I call this function as appwriteconfig.github login. Now GitHub log and Google login both are exactly same. You just need to change the keyword from Google to GitHub to enable GitHub login. Once you do this, And let me just show you how does your failure and success redirect URLs look like. So if you go to your success URL, you can see it has nothing. It just has a simple container which is returning success JSON, and this success.json is basically a lottie file. That means it can just show an animation that yes, the authentication is complete. And same for failure, just shows of animation that authentication has been failed, and it would redirect you to the login page so that you can just log in again. And if your authentication is successful, it would just redirect you to your landing page. And this is how it's easy to set up your authentication using Appwrite and making calls to the Appwrite cloud to authenticate your user from your Next.js application. In the next chapter of the video, we'll see how you can create events using events into your Appwrite database. Now, once your authentication part is complete, let's just see quickly how you can create an event, and once your event is created, how you can view the details of that event in the next tab. So go to your official documentation, and as I said in my database schema chapter, that every event that you create is a document created into your database. So let's just quickly see how to create a document into our database. So if you just click on your database part and click on this create document, you can see you just need to create a database object, and using that database object, you can call this function as create document, and this create document accepts some parameters which are database ID, collection ID, document ID, and at last all the database needs to be inserted. So let's just see quickly how you can create your document, or in other words, create an event. Now, if you go to the create directory, you can just click on this create.tsx page, and you can see I have created some fields using useState. They are all the details which I need to create an event. And once I get all these events from these text fields, because these text fields are repetitive and I won't be going much into that, you can just take a look at this, all the text fields into my GitHub repo. I would link down that GitHub repo. And these are just some text fields, and these are text fields which are mapped to the respective variables, or you can say the fields that I have created using useState. And once the user clicks on handle submit button, my method of Appwrite in my Appwrite config, which is create event, is called, passing all these attributes. If I go to my create event function, now, as I said that the user would also be uploading a banner or the banner image of that event. So the first step that I would be doing is to create a file, and you can just also see this in your official documentation. This create file function accepts some parameters such as the bucket ID, file ID, and that actual file. So I have already created a bucket in my Appwrite Cloud Console. So I would just pass this banner bucket ID, and this ID need to be unique, and my banner which I am getting passed as a parameter into my create event function. Once my file upload has been done, I will get a response. Now this response contains my unique file ID. I would be using this file ID to construct my URL for that project. Now this is the public URL which will be used to access any files in that cloud storage. Now if you just follow this URL, it goes like cloud.appwrite.io/v1/storage/buckets, and then the banner bucket ID /files, and then the file ID. After that, it just takes some more parameters such as project ID, which is already defined into environment variables. And once this URL is constructed, I would just call this create document function, passing it the database ID, the collection ID, and I need to have this event and unique ID. So I would just call this function which is id.unique, and inside my curly braces, I would just pass all the data which needs to be stored into my database. Now, after that, once my event is created, as I said, every event that is created creates a corresponding collection in my registration database and sponsors database. So using this server config class which I have created, I would be calling my create registration collection and my create sponsors collection. Let's just quickly look how they are implemented. If you click on create registration collection, so inside my server config class, you just need to create a new API key from your Appwrite console to access the server config. Because to create collections and database from your client side, you need to have access to server config, You can only insert documents from your client-side SDK. So for my create registration collection, I would be passing my registration. I would be passing my database ID, the name of my ID, or the name of my event, the name of the event ID of that event, and the name of the event, and passing these permissions. And once these permissions are passed, I would be creating 3 attributes, which are name, email, and my confirmation status. Similarly, in my sponsors collection, I would be creating my sponsors using my ID of my sponsors database, the ID of that event, and the name of that event. Once my collection is created, the first attribute which I would be creating is my name attribute. Once my name attribute of that sponsors collection is created, I would be creating my URL attribute. And once both of these attributes are created, as I said, the sponsors that are getting added are in the form of an array or a list. So I need to iterate over all the elements in that list to add all my sponsors into my database. So this loop does the exact same thing. It just iterates over that sponsors array, and every element is added into that document, added into that collection as a document. So in that way, once an event is created, it also creates an collection in my sponsors and registration database, and in my sponsors database it as the following documents. Now, when the documents would be added in my registration collection, once a user registers for an event, right? Now, as I can see, my event is created, right? Now, how do I read all the details from my document? So if you go and see this option, which is get document, and it says that you can get a document by its unique ID, and this endpoint returns a JSON object with the document data. Exactly what we need. So how do we get this? We just need to call this get document function and pass it the database ID, collection ID, and document ID. Now, as I said, once my document or my event is created, I am getting a document ID, right? So if you go to my events page, and because every event that is created is having a different ID, and that needs to be correspondingly displayed on my details page. For that, I am using a dynamic route here. As you can see, I have a square bracket. That means I am using a dynamic route. So how does this dynamic route works? Well, I am getting this event ID from this dynamic route or this parameter string. And once I get this event ID, in my use effect, using this function of get document, I am passing my database ID, I am passing my collection ID, and I am passing my document ID. Once I get this document, I just set it to my documents registration and just call all the parameters which I need to show into my details page. Now, this is when you will get your document ID, right? Now, how will you get a document ID? Before getting a document ID, you need to list down all the documents into your event listing page, so that whenever someone clicks on that particular event, he gets that event ID or that document ID and is redirected to this page. So for doing that, inside your events directory, I have this page known as event.tsx. This does the exact same thing. But before that, you need to understand how you can list all the documents in a collection. So get over to your document of your documentation again, and here you have an option of list documents. So listing document is as easy as it says, and you just need to call this list documents and pass it the database ID and collection ID. So I'm doing the exact same thing inside my use effect. Now, just a quick reminder, use effect is called whenever the page is just loaded. So what I want is, as soon as my events page is loading, I want my use effect to get all my documents or all my events from the database. So exactly what I'm doing. I've created a variable as events, and inside my use effect, I'm using my database object to list down all the documents in passing my database ID and my event collection ID, and setting it after I get all my documents. I'm setting this to events. Now, to subscribe to real-time events or to subscribe to real-time changes to my database, I need to use something known as client.subscribe. Now, where can you find this in your official documentation? If you see the APIs, you will get an API known as real-time API. Now, inside your real-time API, you have some channels to which you can subscribe. So if you just move down a bit, as you can see, these are all the channels which you can subscribe. So you have database.collection.documents. So this is exactly what we need. As soon as there is some addition to that document that is a new event is created, my database should listen to that changes and update the UI as soon as that happens. So what I'm doing is I'm passing databases dot the ID of the database dot collection, ID of that collection, and all the documents in that database. And once any change happens, it just lists down all the documents once again, right? And once it is done, I'm just using map operator in JavaScript or TypeScript to map all the documents which is getting listed using this item.id. Now, where are we passing that document ID or that event ID so that to that dynamic route so that we can get the details of that event? So if you just move down, I have a button which says register. So as you might have remember, I have a register button, and as soon as someone clicks on register, I am passing this dynamic route with the document ID, and inside my events, I am getting this document ID, and using that document ID, I am calling that document ID from my database and getting all the details and showing it on my details screen, right? So in this video, what all things I have covered: how to create an event in your document, how to list all the documents in your collection, and how you can get the details about a specific document using that document ID, right? So in the next chapter, we'll see how you can set up the registration feature into your application. Now let's just implement this feature of where a user can register for an event. So if you go to my official, to my cloud console, what are the things that need to be taken care in the backend once an user clicks on the register button? So the first thing that needs to be happened in my registration database, inside that respective collection of that event, the user needs to get entered as an attendee for that event, right? And the second thing which I need to do in my database is that in my events, active events, I need to store that registry of that user inside my registration. So if I click on this event, which one of the events that I have created, it has a registration string. So it needs to store all the user ID of the users which are registering for this event. So let's see how we can do this. So in the register button is basically present in my details page, that once a user click on events / the ID of that event, it can view all the details about that user or about that event. And where is my registration button? So this is my registration button. So I'm handling some of the cases where user is already registered, but let's say the user is not already registered. So what my onClick method does is, first of all, in my local storage, it gets the ID of the user currently logged in, because the user which is currently logged in needs to be registered for that event. So I am maintaining a registration array, and I am adding that user into that registration array. Now we need to understand how do we update a document. So let's just go to our official documentation quickly. Click on databases and click on update document. So as you can see, for updating my document, I need to pass the database ID, the collection ID, the document ID, and my data. So as you can see, all the parameters, these are the required parameters, and I need to pass my data which needs to be updated. So I am passing my database ID, I am passing my document ID in my update document, I am passing that event I am passing my database ID, collection ID, and my document ID. And what I need to update is the registration, because this is the new registration array which is getting formed, or the new registry which is getting added to that registration. So once my document is updated, in my registration database, I would be creating a document. Now while I'm creating a document, again I need to pass some parameters, which are the database ID, collection ID, and the document ID, and at last the data. So this is my database ID, this is my collection ID, and the document ID would be same as that of the user ID of that user, so that it's easy to retrieve the user or list down all the users which are registering for that event. So this basically sets the document ID as same as the user ID of that currently logged in user, and this is the data which is getting stored. So first is the name of the user, second is the email of the user, and then the confirmation status, which is set to empty. And once the registration of the user is done, it just redirects the user to the success registration page. Now, what if the user is already registered? How do we check that? So what I am doing is, once the page gets loaded, I am getting all the registrations of that user and checking if that registration list of registration, which is where is that list of registration present. So this is the list of registration, and it has all the user ID of the users which are registered for this event. So does this registration array contains the user ID of the currently logged in user? If it contains, then set that the user is already registered. And if it's already registered for that event, I would show this button which is registered. So this was how you can register for an event using and handle all the functionalities in the backend and the data which needs to be updated in the database. Now let's see you in your next chapter. Let's see how you can implement the email sending feature using SendGrid API into your application, right? So we have two buttons. One is accepted and one is rejected. Inside onClick method of accepted button, call the handle acceptance email function, and inside rejected onClick method, call the handle rejection function. Now, if you see the implementation of acceptance email and rejection email, both have a similar kind of implementation. So as you can see, even the parameters which are passed to both these functions are same. First is the ID of the user, second is the name of the user, and third is the email of the user. We need the ID of the user so that we can update the confirmation status into our document. So the first step which we are doing is updating the document and the confirmation state of the users to accept in my acceptance email method, and I'm updating it to reject in my rejection email method. I need the name of the user so that I can send email mentioning his name, and obviously his email ID so that I can send an email to his email ID. After that, you can see I'm in both of these methods, which is acceptance email and rejection email, I'm calling this call API method. Now this call API method, if you just hover over this, you would see it. Call API is also a method which I have implemented, and it takes parameters like email, subject, and message. So email is the parameter, or you can say the email which needs to be sent, the subject of the mail, and the message that needs to be sent, right? So, and I have just personalized all acceptance and email a bit. So like for acceptance, it has something like knock knock, seems like your lucky day. And for rejection, I've changed the template to we appreciate your interest in the event, something like that, right? So let's now just see the implementation of this call API method. So this call API method, what it does is calls another Express, or you can say Node.js API, which I have created, which further calls the SendGrid API to send that emails. Now, as you know that Node.js itself has its own API, or you can say API route. You can use that API route, right? Absolutely no problem in that. You can use that API route to send emails itself in your Next.js application. But I have abstracted this and created a separate API so that I can further use it in my future projects or future applications, because it just needs an email subject message and it can just send email to any of the user, right? So just to increase the scalability of this API and increase its use cases, I have created a different API, and I will show how you have implemented this API already. So it is making a post request, and in my body, I am sending the email, subject, and message to this API. Now let's just see the implementation of this API. Okay, so it's a simple Node.js, or you can say Express server. The first step would be to install these dependencies, which are SendGrid, body parser, cause, .env, Express, and NodeMon. NodeMon is like dependent upon you whether you want to use it in your development or not, but I have used it, right? So, and in your env, you need to set your SendGrid API key. I will show you how you can retrieve your SendGrid API key from the dashboard. And I have a single file index.js, and it also has a single entry point, which is send email, which is also on a post request. So once I get a post request, what I will do is set my API key from the processes.env.SendGrid API key. I will construct a message, which consists of parameters like to, from, and now here you can see I've written eventdaily.in@gmail.com. That is the email of my platform. But before you can directly use this platform to send emails on behalf, you need to verify the sender's email in your SendGrid's dashboard. I'll show you how you can verify that also. And you also need to pass subject and text, right? Once this message is created, you can just await this SendGrid's using this SendGrid's API, or you can say send this message. And once the message is successfully sent, return a status code of 200. Other than that, return a status code of 500. Right? A simple API just having a single endpoint just constructs the message that it gets from its request using to, from, and subject, and just sends the email using the SendGrid's package, right? Now let's see how you can get an API key and how to verify a sender's identity into your SendGrid's dashboard. Okay, so if you go to SendGrid's dashboard, you will see a page something like this, right? To get an API key, click on settings and click on API keys. So here you can create your own API key, give permissions according to you, and just enter the name of API key and click on create and view. Note that you can only view once, you can only see your API key once. So the moment you click on create and view, your API key would be displayed on the screen. Copy it and save it for future references. If you forgot your API key, you need to just delete the existing API key and create a new one, right? So you can just get your API key from here. So I have an active API key. And to verify the sender's email so that the email can be sent on behalf from SendGrid, you need to click on sender authentication. And either you can authenticate your domain or you can authenticate your single sender. So just click on verify a single sender. I have currently verified one of my personal email IDs and my project's email ID. So click on verify a single sender, and here you can enter all the details of the sender. Let's say you have created your own application. Just write down my project, and here enter valid email ID from which you need to send, on whose behalf you need to send your emails. And also you can provide a reply to it that can be same as from email address, right? So just fill all the details and click create. Once you click create, you will get a confirmation mail on your email ID. You need to verify that. Once you verify that, your email ID would be verified as a sender email ID, and that you can use it to send emails on behalf from using SendGrid, right? So that was all the things you need to set up this feature of sending emails to all the attendees. Just a quick recap. What I did is created two different functions. One is handle acceptance mail, handle rejection mail. Constructed, or you can see personalized, both the messages of acceptance and rejections. Then in both the case, I am calling this call API. This call API is just calling this API which I have created and deployed. And in my using a post request, I'm sending email, subject, and message in my body. And inside this send email API, what I'm doing is just constructing a message and using SendGrid's package to send that email using passing the API key of SendGrid. Now, if you need to deploy your API onto Vercel, like this email server into your Vercel, you need to create a file known as vercel.json and just include this line of code. You need to provide your source directory, your destination. If you have used app.js, just write app.js. And even here, if you have used app.js instead of index.js, just write app.js. And then just connect this report to your Vercel dashboard, and your API would be deployed automatically. That's it. That was how easy it's to implement a implement a feature to send emails to attendees on behalf of the platform, right? Now, since you have finished integrating all the features into your application, it's time to deploy it on Vercel so that everyone in this world can see what you have built. So to deploy your web application, go to your Vercel dashboard and you will find some of your existing projects. To add a new project, simply click on add new and select project. Now here you need to import your Git repositories. So make sure that you have pushed your project into your GitHub and connect your GitHub repository. So once you connect your GitHub repository, you will see your project here. Just click on import and it would automatically detect the framework, which is Next.js in this case. And you also need to import all the environment variables. As I showed you earlier, that inside your env.local you will have all your API keys and your project ID. So just import this file in here and click on deploy. Once you click on deploy, you will have a page something like this, which would show that your deployment is successful and your URL or your web page is available at this URL. So you can just share this URL to anyone in this world and they can visit your application. Now, as the tutorial is complete, you would also find that a link to the blog of this project in the description, because if you prefer reading a blog instead of watching a video, you can refer this. And I will also be linking down the GitHub repository so that you can take a reference to all the code, and anything if you have missed, you can just refer to the GitHub repository. Thank you.